Last year, players like Nico Collins and Raheem Mostert were being ignored in fantasy football. Well, you see how that turned out. Who are some players this year that are getting overlooked but shouldn't be? If you just can't wait to draft for next year, you don't have to. Get on UnderdogFantasy.com and you can join Best Ball Mania 5, their flagship contest, with up to $15 million in total prizes. Get in the best ball action right now. Sign up with code ENDGAME to claim your special pick and first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. All right, let's start out with a veteran running back who might finally live up to expectations.
Weird to hear the word veteran with Javonte Williams because it feels like he's barely played in the NFL because he has barely played in the NFL, to be honest. Still is pretty young by running back standards, especially when it comes to the wear and tear he's had in his body. Remember, as a rookie, we had high hopes for Javonte Williams. Obviously, spent that year splitting with Melvin Gordon. Going into year two, it looked like right when he was going to start pulling away, break away, and be that guy we were hoping for, he tore his ACL, missed the rest of the season. And then last year, just really struggled because that's what running backs do when they come back from ACL. They struggle that first year. But what I was really encouraged by with Javonte Williams last year was a couple things. Number one, he had a 58% opportunity share in this Broncos offense. And remember, for maybe like the first half of the season, he was playing limited snaps. So once he got, more healthy, it seemed like Sean Payton really trusted him. The other thing I liked is he had over 50 targets last year. We don't think of Javonte Williams as, this great prolific pass catcher, but he ranked 17th in targets among all running backs last year, so he caught enough passes. And then the third thing I like is, what have the Broncos done at running back to make me fear Javonte Williams' role? They drafted Audric Estime late in the draft, one of my least favorite running back prospects of this draft class. There's a good chance Samaje Perine gets cut after June 1st. They'll save about $3 million in cap space. I think we see Javonte Williams as the clear RB1 here. And look, whatever you think of Bo Nix, whether you think he's going to be a bust, whether you think he's going to be good, it's probably better than Jarrett Stidham, which is what we were looking at as the potential starting QB this year. So I don't think we see the Broncos as, a top 10, top 15 type of offense, but I think they'll be a good enough offense for Javonte Williams. They'll get those checkdowns from Bo Nix. They'll get chances to score touchdowns. And now he's going to be fully healthy 2 years removed from ACL, and we can finally see the guy we've been hoping to see for his brief career so far.
Well, Jackson Smith-Njigba in Seattle has definitely not been in the league long. His rookie season just ended, and it was definitely underwhelming. He finished as the wide receiver 3 on his own team. That's not what you want to see, especially when they made him the very first receiver drafted. Well, I think we'll see definitely a step forward this year for a few reasons. First of all, Tyler Lockett, yeah, he's still there. They restructured his contract to keep him around, but he saw a slight dip last year. He's still viable. He's still a good player. He'll still be involved. But come on, they did not draft JSN to be the number 3 receiver there. It was a product of this offense just not being very explosive, to be honest. So first of all, I would just say this. I do think they try to get JSN more involved and Tyler Lockett takes a slight step back. But then there's also the fact that this whole offense has changed. Pete Carroll is gone, new coach, new offensive coordinator. We're talking about the guy who was just coach at Washington Huskies. With that offense, we're going to bring a lot more open look here. They're going to actually try to pass the ball and get it to their playmakers, which is something they inexplicably did not do very much of last year. What about the quarterback situation? It's probably still going to be Geno Smith, but at least they brought in some competition with Sam Howell. Look, regardless of what you think of Sam Howell, and I'm not saying I think he'll take over the starting job or that he should, but at least there should be a fire lit under Geno to prove that he still needs to be the starter because they know with new coach in town, they could move on next year if things don't go well. So all told, look, I don't know that Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be a wide receiver 1 for fantasy. I'm not saying that, but I don't understand how he's getting drafted behind rookies like Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas in underdog drafts. I mean, come on. This guy is definitely a playmaker. He just needs the chance to show it. Now, another team with a new offensive coordinator in town could mean good things for a veteran receiver.
It's weird to say, Chris Godwin is being ignored, but he is being ignored in fantasy drafts. His stock has fallen far. And not to mention last year, he was kind of ignored by his own team. It felt like just many weeks where he did absolutely nothing. But I like his chances of bouncing back this year because new offensive coordinator Liam Cohen is already talking about playing him in the slot way more again. When you look at the last 3 years for Chris Godwin, last year in the slot, only about 30% of the time. The 2 years prior, over 60% of the time. He is better off being in the slot with Evans on the outside in that X receiver role. Now, let's not forget, not too long ago, over a 3-year period, Chris Godwin averaged 19 points per game, 16 points per game, and 17 points per game. This is a good player who's got upside. He tore his ACL. Of course, the first year back from ACL, you're going to struggle. Last year was struggled because he was invisible in the offense. But I think with the new offensive coordinator, putting him in the slot, we're going to see him way more involved in this offense. I think he bounces back closer to what we've seen in the past. And people who realize that and don't ignore him in the fantasy drafts are going to benefit.
All right, let's talk tight end. Player who is being drafted either late or not at all in our early mocks that we've been doing. And it's just kind of there, but doesn't feel like anybody's too excited to grab Jake Ferguson in Dallas. I am happy to settle for him as my starting tight end because there's only going to be improvement this year. Now, in his second NFL season last year, he became one of the main targets here for Dak Prescott and wound up as the tight end 10 in fantasy scoring. Pretty good. Well, I'll tell you what, I think he's ready to pass some of those guys who finished ahead of him, like Cole Kmet, David Njoku, and even TJ Hawkinson, who might be limited or miss some part of the season to start out recovering from ACL. Jake Ferguson in year 3 is probably going to see an uptick in targets. He already finished as the number 8 receiver in terms of yardage for a tight end. That's pretty good. As far as touchdowns, I feel like he scored more than just 5 touchdowns, but apparently he only scored 5 times. That number's probably going to go up. Here's the other thing that's actually encouraging to me is Dallas really didn't do anything to improve that offense. In fact, they lost some pieces and didn't replace them. We know that Michael Gallup is gone. All they did at receiver was draft somebody late. I don't really even remember who it was, Ryan Flournoy. They don't really have anything going there besides CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks. And then at running back, they lost Tony Pollard and replaced him with Dusty Zeke. The running game might struggle. The passing game doesn't have many options. This is where tight ends thrive. And Jake Ferguson in year 3, I think is ready to take that leap, possibly even as a top 5 fantasy tight end. Now in that same division, Washington's a team that has a lot of changes. What does that mean for fantasy?
Yeah, speaking of a player that doesn't get drafted in our mocks and I think should be, is Jaden Daniels, their new rookie quarterback, because Jaden Daniels brings a couple of things to the table that is great for fantasy. Number one, last year he averaged over 11 yards per attempt. I realize it's college, but that is a ridiculous number. This guy can absolutely sling it, and he's incredibly accurate. Number two, he ran for over 1,100 yards while averaging over 8 yards per carry. He's got that insane athleticism to go with insane arm talent. And we've seen rookie quarterbacks like this before have success. Lamar Jackson, remember when he took over second half of the season, dominated. Justin Fields, when he finally took over, was great. We've seen running quarterbacks like this who actually have an arm when they get the chance can be fantastic in fantasy. Even last year, Anthony Richardson, before he hurt his shoulder, was dominating fantasy football. This is what Jaden Daniels can do this year, and he's landed in a situation I love because, A, he's already got Terry McLaurin. He's got Jahan Dotson there, who I still believe in as a prospect, and new head coach Dan Quinn, but more importantly, new offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. Say what you want about Kingsbury as a head coach. He's probably not very good at it, but he's a good offensive mind. He's a good offensive coordinator, and he knows how to utilize quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels. He did it with Kyler Murray. He'll do it with Jaden Daniels. This guy has tremendous fantasy upside this year. We saw with CJ Stroud last year and Anthony Richardson before he got hurt. It doesn't matter that these guys are rookies. They can be great in fantasy right away if they're in the right situation, and Jaden Daniels is.
Well, I'm right there with you. Look, if we're going to believe in Jaden Daniels, we got to believe in his receivers. Yeah, everybody knows Terry McLaurin expected to be their top receiver and really good in fantasy, but people are forgetting about Jahan Dotson. And I understand why, because he had a very forgettable second season. And it's funny because last year he was getting too much attention. It was crazy. I don't know why. Maybe just because he put up some preseason highlights. But all of a sudden, everybody was buying into the Jahan Dotson breakout. And he was getting drafted in like round 4 or 5 fantasy drafts. I was like, that is way too high. And it turned out to be way too high no matter where he was drafted because he was dropped and forgotten about throughout the season. And rightfully so. He actually wound up with fewer total yards receiving in his second season, despite playing 5 more games than his rookie season, and that yards per reception dropped. But I think there's a lot of things going on here. I mean, obviously, the coach got fired for a reason. The quarterback is gone for a reason. So now a new quarterback with a ton of talent and can sling the ball deep, like you said. Jahan Dotson as a rookie averaged almost 15 yards per reception. He is good at getting deep because he's got speed. He just needs to be in a better situation, which he now is. I think he can bounce back. We know he's got the talent. This is a very high-end prospect. So if Daniels and Dotson click, maybe Dotson will actually live up to last year's expectations. You got to pay attention to these players on draft day, have a chance to have much better seasons, and you definitely want to know about these running backs. These could be this year's breakout RB1.